So again, our goal is to get it to where it says this many results per page, to have it change, and then to have some buttons here that allow us to click on different pages to move around in this process of what we call pagination. That's what we're trying to do, is get pagination into this app, which will teach us some really good principles of React working with .NET along the way. So how do I get, I've got the user selecting something here. How do I get that information up to the server? Obviously, we have moved information down from the server to React using this useEffect call and going to that address and receiving some JSON. That's how we're getting the data. How do we send information up? And you may remember that in just a .NET MVC app, we use the slug to pass information when we need to. Well, it's the same concept here, although this is a single page application, so we're not really going to a new URL. We're making a request to the server. But in this request, we can pass information up to the server as we make the request. And so again, what we're going to do is use the question mark to indicate this additional information. Well, what do we need to know? We need to know what is the page size, right? And so we have to have a variable named page size to hold this information. And where do we create variables? Well, we can just create a variable, a const called page size, and set it equal to whatever, and then set this and have that work fine. But we're dealing with this issue of state in HTML. And as we move from page to page, when we come back, do we want to retain what was on that page, or is it going to be reset, right? And so typically we like using these state variables because then everything stays consistent as you move back and forth between pages. And so instead of just setting up a very irregular variable like we could, then we want to just use this same idea of creating a state variable. So we'll call this one, this is going to be the page size, and then we'll have a set page size. And then we have to go in and say, we're going to use state here. What type of information is page size going to be? Well, in this case, it's a number. And then after the number, we say, what is the default value? And so we can just make up a value here. How many do we want our default to be if we don't pass anything? So I'm going to say 10 here as a default size. Now, these warnings are just because we aren't using it yet. So that's fine. But now when the user actually selects that box down here, we can take and choose what they select. So the value is going to be whatever the page size is to start. And then on change is the name of the method we want to use. We can write a little function. So when we change, and again, this is just an inline function using the lambda or the arrow function. So we could create a separate function up here and then call that function down here. But instead, we're choosing to we're never going to reuse this function anywhere else. We're choosing just to make it more efficient and write it out inline instead. So this is what's being passed in. In our case, nothing's being passed in. Well, I guess on the change, we do want to create a variable so that we can use it. So I'll just call it P, and you'll see how we're using this in a second. So arrow function, and we're going to call so when the user selects one of these options, we're going to call our set page size. So I'll say set page size, and then I'm going to set page size equal to the P that's coming in is going to be what the user selected, .target .value. This will give us the value of whatever they selected. The only issue is that this is a number and that this is going to come in as a string, the way that value works. And so I just need to convert this, and the way that I can cast it is just by saying number P target value. All right, so we're learning a lot of principles along the way here. Again, some of these things you're only going to see once, and so pay attention. So we're readdressing this idea of an arrow function, an anonymous function that doesn't have a name or anything. We just call this function. This is what's coming into us with that change that occurred. And then we're calling the set page size method, and we're passing in this converted to a number on that change. All right, so then page size gets set. Notice that these aren't read anymore because both of them are being used. We're using page size in this value, and we're calling the set page size. All right, so we need to get this information up back to where we were with this question mark. I want to pass a value, and so the first thing I do is say the name of the thing that's going to come up is going to be page. Do I want to use page size again? This is something different. What else can I call it? Page. I'm tempted to call it something different so you don't get it confused. Page how many. Page how many is going to be equal to, and then I put in a $ to indicate this is going to be a value, and then the braces and page size. Now, it's not working right. It's not treating this at a value because it's between quotes. And so I have to figure out how to turn this into a value. And the way that React has chosen to do this is to use a backtick. And this is common in different programming languages to do this. If I'm going to have a mix of not just a string, one big string, but I'm going to have variables inside of the string, then instead of using the regular quote next to the enter key, I'm going to use the backtick, which is usually on the top left-hand side of the keyboard. I call it backward apostrophe. And when we do that, did you notice how it changes? Now, using this backtick, we call it, it recognizes this as a variable as it's being passed up. And so now as we make the request, it's going to go grab whatever is in this page size variable at the time and pass that to the server. All right, let's save that. On the server side, I need to, in my controller, make a way to receive that. And so just like we did when we were doing the slugs with the URLs, we are going to create an integer here. And what does it need to be named? It needs to be named the exact same thing it was down here, which is why I named it. So page how many. So I can call this page how many. And now when the request is made, it's going to pass up that information. All right, let's see if we can watch this work. I'll put a stop here with this server. Well, I'll have to run it in. Well, what should we? I guess we need to modify the code first. Let me do this. So the how many represents what? How many we're going to have at a time. So is that the skip or is that the take? That's the take, right? So I'm going to say page how many is how many I'm going to take at a time. Okay, does that make sense? So I'll save this, and when I do, it's going to update our reload. And then over here, let's just watch and see if this much works. I actually don't know if it's going to. I'm doing things out of order, different from my notes, but we're going to try it. So let's do an npm run dev. I'm going to do a save all to make sure I haven't missed anything. I have, so okay. So we're running. Oh, but we already had one running apparently. Let's close for a minute. I want to stop everything. Close. Yes, I think I opened 2 terminal windows accidentally. So I'm going to close that one and close that one. Terminal, new terminal. All right, let's try this again. npm run dev. Oh, I would need to cd into the front end folder first. npm run dev. Let's see, it's using 3001, which isn't going to work for us because our cores, if you recall, is set up to only get 3000. So I can change this to 3001, and it did reload. So let's try it. But we didn't get any results. Okay, so we're going to have to figure this out in the next video. Spencer out.